Hello, and welcome to another podcast, I guess, of Reading Between the Lines. Today, we're going to take a look at the Reading women's team and how they've done this season. Before we start anything else, we should probably touch on Emma McCandy and the comments she made in a podcast the other day about how Reading didn't really support her during her pregnancy. It's just really unacceptable. I mean, whether or not it's a problem for the WSL and the FA and women's football more generally isn't really the point. Like, Reading as a club should be doing more to support its players. We also had a story last year where Molly Bartrip talked about her eating disorder and how she didn't really feel supported by Reading either. And you just hope they these incidents have happened now, and let's hope that we as a club can learn from it and be better next time, because in whatever job you're in, you should be supported. And that goes for football as well as it does for everything else. So, yeah, I might make some comments about Emma McCundy that are negative in this video. And I just want to stress that that is not at all to do with her comments, except where I am directly quoting or paraphrasing what she has said. Um, it won't be to do with her pregnancy or anything like that. It's what her comments to do with the rest of the squad and also becoming a captain. Um, yeah. So without further ado, let's get on to the on pitch things, because that's what we're here to talk about. So this was the setup in Reading's first game against Manchester United, which we lost 4-0. There are a few interesting selection choices here, uh, partly forced because Reading didn't have a full squad. Emma Harries wasn't available. I don't think Van Havermaet was available for this game. So we've gone into it with in a 5-2-3, a shape that actually really worked well against Chelsea last season when we picked up a 1-0 victory at home, but never really worked in this game. One of the things that we did really well in that Chelsea game was have Eichland and Van Havermaet pressing and just shutting things off. And Lee Woodham on the left, which he is in this game as well, is very good at reading when to press and when not to. And likewise, Bryson, when she was playing, she was very good at that as well. We have some players playing out of position here. Emma McCandy herself is playing at centre back in a role that didn't really suit her very well. She is very good at 1v1 defending, but she's not really a centre back, to be perfectly honest. But this is where we need to talk about Deanne Rose, who got injured about 20 minutes into this game and hasn't featured since. She was such a big part of what we did last season, alongside Emma Harries, both of them flanking Natasha Dowie. I've just realised that Emma Harries is the player that I was trying to think of earlier that I was missing, so let's add her in. So yeah, both of them flanking Natasha Dowie up top was how we kind of got a lot of points. Natasha Dowie's very good at bringing the ball down and just spreading the play, and we haven't managed to do that so far this season, really. One of the other things about this back five is that we are very bad at defending crosses into the box. So we played Liverpool in a game that ended 3-3. I can't remember exactly who was playing, but the defense looked something like Emma McCandy out wide, and then I think we had Coolwell in the middle as well. Diana Cooper was on this side, and what would kind of happen is McCandy would push up because she takes free kicks, she takes uh, corners. She's also a decent attacking threat. She's good at putting balls into the box and things like that. But that would leave a massive space in behind her. Diana Cooper would have to come out, and McCandy's not the quickest player in the world. She wouldn't really get back in time to put enough pressure on whoever was out wide, and they would just put the ball into the box and score, basically. And that happened, I think, 3 times in that game, or at least twice. Maybe it wasn't McCandy every time, and maybe it wasn't that side, but the same kind of thing happened down the left. Woodham pushes up, or Evans pushes out, and whatever happens, the ball gets put into the box and it's not dealt with. The number of free headers that were happening in that game, and actually in the Aston Villa game before that, we conceded, I think, once from a corner and once from a cross again. It's just not good enough at this level. Yes, football cliches. But slowly got into the season, and I do mean slowly. At one point, we were playing Leicester with both teams on 0 points. and 1-0 down going into stoppage time, and up steps Rachel Rowe from over here, actually, the corner flag. She scored from there, and then she scored from somewhere around here. Um, Twice in second half stoppage time to win the game, and that just relieved a lot of pressure. I think Reading also started getting a few more players back at that point. I really must stress that even though Lauren Wade, Charlie Wellings haven't been playing every game, just having those guys here has made a massive difference, because last season Reading were bottom in the number of subs made. This season we're nowhere near that, and just having players available to be able to rotate is obviously a good thing. We talk about that with the men's as well. Hopefully, it will bear fruit as we come towards the end of the season. Obviously, women's teams tend not to play as many club games as their male counterparts, but they do play a lot of international games. And regardless, an injury that puts you out for 6 months in the case of Jan Rose is still an injury, and you need people to try and cover for that. We've kind of iterated through quite a lot of formations during the year. So I know I've got a board up here that I haven't really touched, but that's because I would be playing around with it so much that it would end up being pointless. But what ended up happening really was that we dropped one of our centre backs, normally Caldwell. Evans and Cooper ended up being, in a four with McCandy or Woodham. The right back, it's McCandy or it's Faye Bryson. I actually think, and this is one of the things that Emma McCandy herself touched on, was she wasn't quite sure why she was made captain. And I think that Kelly Chambers has slightly shot herself in the foot there, because she clearly wants to play Lily Woodham because she's a very good player. But Emma McCandy plays in exactly the same position, and it's trying to play both of them in a system that still makes sense. And sometimes I think that we've been trying to play systems solely to fit them both in. I bet that's not fair, but that's what it feels like sometimes. Obviously, when you're not in the room, you don't really know. But yes, so Justine Van Havemart sat in front of the defence, just like she was doing basically all of last year. She's very good at dropping back in, so we can actually play a back five type thing if we wanted to, with Woodham and McCandy getting a lot higher. She's also just, she's good at mopping up. She's quite good at just keeping tempo going. Another player really good at that, who I really like, is Tia Primer, who has started to come into this team a lot more regularly this season. She's playing 90 minutes almost all the time now. She is a lot more kind of busy than Justine Van Havemart. She will drop in, she'll pass, she'll move around, and then so often she'll be the first pass and she'll attempt to be the last pass as well by breaking the lines. It's really fun, actually. She's lively, and sometimes really need. She doesn't work so well with Rachel Rowe, who I feel like has taken a lot of plaudits this season, because she is a great player who, in that Leicester game, I was almost worried about this team being relegated that early on. Like, if we were on no points and losing to Leicester, that's not a great place to be. But Rachel Rowe likes having the ball at her feet, and Tia Primer likes basically doing the opposite. But they both play in quite similar areas. And so I think it was just causing a bit of, as in basketball, they call it a spacing. So, like, being around the D in basketball, you want to be in an optimal position so that you can move the other team around. And sometimes we weren't doing that. Like, even if Rachel Rowe was up front in a two, she would often end up dropping back and in and trying to pick up the ball a lot deeper. And that's not really what we needed from her in those situations, because, we needed someone to stay up here. And I do not want to suggest that Rachel Rowe is not a good player. I think she's the best technical player that we have. I think she is a complete asset to this team. She does things that nobody else could do. But, players have different strengths. And I think like Tia Primer has different strengths to Rachel Rowe. Like, if you can fit them in the same team, that'd be perfect. I'm yet to quite see it, but, hopefully we'll have time in the second half of this season, especially. And we ended up in the final game of the WSL and the last couple of games in the League Cup, which is a bit of an odd group stage competition with featuring championship and teams from the WSL. We ended up playing like a diamond, which I think is probably our best formation so far. So Deanne Rose, unfortunately, has been injured since that first game. Wade has been playing up top. Charlie Wellings has not really been favoured. I don't want to be, you want to critique a side, but you don't want to be mean about them. I think that maybe Charlie Wellings is not of a high enough technical standard at the minute to justify her place in the team. She also seems to get a little bit frustrated and take pot shots from a lot of places, or she just likes shooting a lot, which is completely fair, and that sometimes works, but she's not shooting from maybe the right areas that we would like her to. And again, some of that comes down to where she's been playing in the side. But hopefully, just as she plays more minutes, she'll get more used to WSL. She was playing in Scotland last year, which is a much easier league. So, she scored 40 goals there, but it's not necessarily representative of what she could do here. Who else was playing? So we had Trollsgaard in behind A2. And Eikeland was in the field. And then Howie. Someone. No, sorry. In the last game of the season, it was actually Emma Harris. Okay. So there's a few things I really like about this setup that maybe our other setups don't quite capture. One of them is, I've said this for a long time, Amelie Eikeland is a central midfielder. I do not care that she plays like she has started as a right winger. I do not care that she plays there for Norway. Her output at the top end of the field is not necessarily what you would like it to be. She's not a great crosser of the ball. She's not a great finisher, but where she is really good is progressive carries. She loves to run with the ball, and she's very good at pressing. She is a perfect central midfielder in this side. And I think we saw that against Chelsea last year. I think we've seen it in spurts this year. And especially alongside Justine van Havemart, who will just sit there, gives Eikeland and Primer a bit more freedom to go and chase the ball down, basically. Trollsgaard, she was playing up front for bits of this season. She's not really a striker, but what she does do really well is, and again, this is where differences in players makes a difference, because Rachel Rowe likes having the ball at her feet, and I feel like I've talked a lot about what Rachel Rowe isn't great at doing in this podcast, which feels really harsh on her. It's the way that the podcast has kind of ended up. She is a very good player. I cannot stress this enough. But I think that she's sort of the wrong player in this Reading team right now. The good thing that Anna Trollsgaard does is she will try and just kick balls behind. And that wasn't working earlier in the season because we didn't have Emma Harries. And I think that how much we lost not having Emma Harries, I knew how much Deanne Rose means to this team, and I knew that Emma Harries meant a lot as well. But I don't think that I fully appreciated how much Emma Harries meant, because, you kind of you think of her as the second part to that kind of duo. But she has just been so good at running in behind, at harrying defenders. Sana Trollsgaard can now put balls in behind that will actually be reached by an attacker, or will at least, someone can put pressure on them. We haven't seen that enough because of the injuries, and Deanne Rose has been injured as well. Not great, upsetting. The other thing this formation does is as you can see, it blocks off the middle very well. But crucially, we have cover out wide, because those players, whilst they will get forward, they are not getting forward as much as they would in a wing-back scenario. And you've got two quite mobile central midfielders who can cover that space as well. So Primer can come wide, Eikeland can come wide, and sometimes they act almost as like a Laurent Renault duo, and they can close down together, or they can just keep shape. And shape is important in this league, because a lot of the time you will be playing someone like an Arsenal or a Chelsea or a Man City, where you are not going to have a lot of the ball, and you are just going to sit back and try and catch them on the counter-attack. And there's probably one final thing to say, and that is Burns, the goalkeeper. So Maloney, for reasons that I won't go into here, because they're too long. Got dropped for Justine Burns, who is Northern Ireland's goalkeeper. So Republic of Ireland being dropped for Northern Ireland. And she, she has been at fault for a couple of goals, but if you look at her post shot expected goals stats, she has actually been a lot better than Grace Maloney. Grace Maloney is kind of a Reading stalwart. She's been great over the years. She has her downsides for sure, as Jacqueline Burns has. But for the first time, it feels we have two really capable goalkeepers who actually are going to play. Like a lot of the time, it was Grace Maloney, and that was kind of it for the season. So that's kind of Reading's formations so far this season. Like in terms of results, they haven't been great. As I said, until we played Leicester, we didn't have a point after 5 or 6 games. Since then, we've picked up a draw against Liverpool in that game where we just conceded headers, and also beat Spurs, which is a good result. You can see what they've been doing in the transfer window. Obviously, Bethany England wasn't playing in that game, but they have been getting a lot better over the years. We lost closely to Chelsea. 2 goals in 2 minutes. Maybe they were a bit whatever catchphrase or cliche you want to use, but it was definitely not the kind of performances that we're used to seeing when Reading play Chelsea. We tend to get battered 5-0, and it's good to kind of keep it close. We come back playing an Everton side who, for a few WSLs now, or at least the last couple, there's been a lot of buzz around Everton and what they're trying to do there. They brought in managers that, they brought in 3 different managers last season, I think. They brought in managers that had done well in Europe, like that were highly regarded. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't quite clicked for them yet. This season, though, they're sitting in 6th. They've won 4. They've lost 5. They beat Villa narrowly. They lost to Arsenal and Man City quite narrowly. That will be quite a good gauge of whether Reading are actually gonna push on in the second half of the season. You would hope, especially given that Leicester's relative squad's quality, that's the word I'm looking for, squad quality, that Reading are not going to get relegated. Like even with 7 points, like the average to kind of get relegated out of this league is 10. So we're only really looking at one more win, and if Reading beat them in the reverse fixture at the King Power, I think that would probably be enough to keep us up by itself. But it's it's football. Anything can happen, as the championship saw last year when the women's championship. Coventry women had a 10-point deduction and stayed up in the 97th minute of the last game by beating Watford with a free kick from about 25 yards to relegate them. So, like, these things happen, and let's hope they don't happen to us, is what I'm trying to say. If you've got any questions or comments, or just want to chat about football, leave us a comment on YouTube. I guess we'll try and read them, or tweet at us. That's where we normally are, at Reading BTL, Reading Between the Lines. And I hope that you've found this useful. If you were interested in how the women have been playing, I personally think that they deserve a lot more press coverage and whatnot. So I will be trying to do that in the next few game weeks, because they play so infrequently. Sometimes it is hard to have enough to talk about if you try to do it, every other week or even every other month. Sometimes they only play once or twice. So I'm not going to put us on a schedule for when the next one will be, but there will definitely be something at the end of the year. Hopefully a few things before the end of the year. Yes.